Have you ever wondered if your thoughts do more than shape your mood? If they might actually shape reality itself? That's the question physicist Amit Goswami explores in his book, The Self-Aware Universe, where quantum science meets the mystery of consciousness. Welcome to Higher Reality, where science and spirit meet at the edge of understanding. I know you're familiar with Amit Goswami, who's a nuclear physicist,
Yes, Barbara actually took his course through Holmes Institute. I learned a lot
and
about
that's
Goswami.
one of the things that I think is impressive about what Holmes Institute did was all of the scholars and the people that they brought in to
Absolutely.
teach the courses. I met him at one of our conferences and was introduced to him, and we had a little conversation, and we were talking about fusion energy and what I was doing in that world.
I had a
He's
conversation with him too, but it wasn't about fusion energy.
I want to talk about his book, The Self-Aware Universe.
I've always heard that he was challenging to deal with administratively, but he's a
And
genius otherwise.
he's challenging in that he challenges everything. He definitely challenges the state of the mind of typical physicists because he brings in metaphysics and
Right,
dovetails that with spirituality. And now you got a cauldron for most physicists, and they're like,
right.
oh, what? Come on. The self aware universe, the thing that I think we talked about at one time, which is good to do, is the idea of the double slit experiment
Yes.
because
It's classic.
it's a foundation for us. It's a foundation in the sense that the experiment, originally back in the 60s, has been proven thousands of times. And the experiment is if you fire an electron towards a pattern, towards a double slit, that it gives this sporadic pattern at first. And when you observe it, that means when you measure it or you observe it physically, whatever that is in the technical world, it changes and the
Right,
electron goes through one slit or the other.
right.
And so that's a big deal.
Sure it
Now,
is. That
it
that's the
means
thing
that
based on observation collapses possibility into actuality. By knowing it's there, by being aware of it, it does not have that duality or that split concept to it. It's just one thing then, like
yeah,
everything else.
exactly.
Was everything doing that?
Everything is actually doing that. Everything is doing that, including Donald Hoffman, who is a psychologist, neuropsychologist, and has become a scientist and mathematician. He's now at the University of Irvine,
Mhm.
California at Irvine. He talks about the fact that the moon does not exist if you're not seeing it. And he said that's a simplification of the concept of the double slit.
Mhm.
It simply means that everything that we see is the result of our senses and so on and so forth. And we believe the world out there because we, as we do in a dream, we believe the world as we believe in the dream concept, and we believe in the dream itself that we're doing whatever it is that's going on in that dream
Right.
until we wake up.
And it works either way. It can be that you observe something and by doing so it becomes real in your reality and then you contend that that's the highest truth, that it's real, that it's there. I can see it, I can touch it, I can taste it, I can smell it, therefore it's real. Or is it?
Right. Or is it? And I think that's important. Now, in the double slit experiment, one of the things I wanted to touch base on, because it's new for most people, is that an electron, we're taught in school, these particles, the electron, the neutron, the positron, they're all particles. In fact, they're not
Maybe.
particles. They're not particles at all until you observe them. But they're in a superposition, means they don't exist in our world in any way, shape, or form. They're in the field, the quantum field. And the actual electron itself is a quantum field, as all the particles are.
Right.
But it's too difficult for people to understand, and even physicists get their pants in a wad when they're trying to figure out how that works. I cleaned it up.
I know you did good.
But I think that's important to understand that it's not what we were taught in high school about
Well,
science.
clearly, I mean, how many years has the human species been on this planet? Not long enough to reveal the great wonders of the universe. We
Yeah.
don't really know. We're tied to our our senses, which hold us in constraints as far to say you can only go this far by using your senses. You can imagine things beyond that, but only a few people have shown that they were interested in doing that. Einstein, of course, being one, Tesla being one. They're around, but it's not the normal way of being human on planet Earth.
Right. And that's interesting because if we look archaeologically back in the days, way back 10,000 years ago, they probably had nothing resembling an ego like we do. Their ego was survival. That's
Right,
all it was.
right.
And so look at the evolution over that period of time to what it is now
Well,
and
no
what the
doubt more
world is showing us.
sophisticated, but still, it's based in survival.
Exactly. And that's the issue, is that the survival is about itself. It wants to survive, and it's not even an entity.
Right, right. But it presumes that it is, that it's something. And I believe that when fear comes up in us, when we get angry, when we feel like we've been cheated or done wrong or any of those things, that's all ego trying to, well, protect itself, protect us,
Yeah.
the same thing as a defense mechanism. And what happens now is that rather than evolving in our understanding and our relationships, that thing keeps popping up, getting in our way. And I've heard the great teachers say the task is kill your ego. I don't know that that's possible, but perhaps we can find a way to tame it a bit.
I think one of the misconceptions from the mystics is just that some talk about killing the ego. And essentially, what I've understood from it, and I'm no expert in that area, but it's not so much killing the ego as it is ignoring it.
That's
Because
what I do
as
because when
we
stuff comes up in me, when I get angry about something, or I think I've been cheated, or I'm afraid of something, I recognize that that's my ego.
Yeah,
And I actually talk to it as though it's something separate. I say, thank you. Thank you for making me aware. Thank you for drawing my attention to it. I got this handled. Goodbye.
yeah.
And basically, even though
Good.
that may be all contrived, it helps me get back on course and not fall into the abyss about whatever has happened.
And we have to do what it's necessary for us to do that works to keep us moving in the right direction, and that's
Exactly.
great. And I think what I tend to do is just question who's this thought coming to? I
Well,
mean,
that's because you're the scientist. I'm the psychologist that wants everything to work out.
oh, well, I don't care if it works out. I think one of the other things that should talk about in the self-aware universe, it's all about consciousness is preeminent, and materialism is a function that comes out of that. And that's a reverse of science as most scientists look at it, because they're materialists saying, first there's an atom and then so if you start from the very beginning, oh, there's an explosion of a star, and from that explosion of a star, all these different minerals and particles come together and form you as atoms, and then as molecules, and then a body, and then a mind, and that's it. They can't go any further.
Well, but that's always been the case in science. And I don't want to get on scientists. I know you're one. I know that there are good, intelligent, incredibly creative scientists in the world, but so much of it is limited by the human senses, by what we can see and understand, what we can through some kind of monitoring, we can identify. And if we can't, then it's not real. And
Classic.
and and it really has to be the other way around. What is reality? Does it make it real because it you can observe it with your senses? That may not be an adequate way to identify
Right.
what's real.
Because my way of illustrating that is, if we're sitting inside a 747, all the windows are blacked out, the only thing we can see is the dashboard.
Right.
That's our senses. we don't see reality, which is what's going on outside. We don't know that the wind that's blowing across the wings is actually blowing across the wings, except that our sense monitor tells us it is.
Right. Or
So,
some other person told us it is.
but as Amit Goswami says, when you start from consciousness, consciousness being preeminent, then you can explain mind, body, the existence of the world and everything else. And that's the crux to the consciousness problem. They call it the great consciousness problem, is that most scientists don't want to go there. Well, for one thing, we're trained in college, we're trained to measure something, get that, something. We're
Right.
trained to measure something and determine its behavior, so that we can do what? Predict what's coming next.
Exactly.
And
And take and have some dominance over it.
yes, because that's the whole point, because you come back to the ego. Now, it's not always. I mean, most of us scientists are very curious about everything,
Exactly.
and we're diving in to figure it all out. But in essence, we're trying to figure out the whole universe and why it is the way it is and what it's doing the way it's doing it, and what are we going to do next?
And we're doing it from parameters that where there's no guarantee at all that they're accurate or real or workable.
But
Just because
people,
our senses reveal them, we somehow think that's real. But then you go back to that double slit experiment, and that very clearly identifies that something else is going on
yeah,
that we have no control over. We have something to say or something to do with it when it collapses into a singularity. But beyond that, no, we
yeah.
have no idea what that is that's going on out there. I've been telling people for 40 years that there's way more going on that your senses do not receive information on than there is.
And I think one of the things Ernest Holmes was good about was putting that kind of information, the science of spirit, into terms that people could understand. The
I agree.
mind creates, right?
Absolutely. Well, yes, the mind, the universal mind creates.
Universal mind.
The us individually impress upon that with our thought, and it just takes it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's brilliant, boy. When I heard that one, I was so happy because that explains so much to me. That no one's trying to run my life. No one's
Right.
trying to make me do any, well, some people are, but beyond that, beyond that, it's absolutely up to me.
Right.
And but nobody gets taught that. God,
But
if our children knew that at the age of 6, that they were the creators of their universe, that they could think something through and have it show up, my God, that would change everything.
isn't there your language is in duality, meaning that when you say divine mind, or the quantum field, I'll call it, decides to express itself into the world as the world and you, and that moves you, you've
But
got
Holmes
that
says that
duality.
it doesn't do anything. It does nothing without the impress of our thought.
That separates you
There
from
is
it.
well, it not really. It means that it could be connected in a way that I have the thought and this universal mind has it simultaneously. It's
But then
there
there's an
together.
assumption.
There's not a place to go. It's simply expressed now. It's thought and then it's expressed.
But there's an assumption in there that you have created, not universal mind, but universal mind is created through you, not you creating,
That's what
correct?
Holmes says. He says we don't create, that we
Yeah.
impress upon the law, and the law does this. Now, impress upon gives you a sense of duality. But truly, if the thought you have is instant, in fact, that's not true. That's not true. I've seen so many times where something was affirmed as being so, and then the person affirming it goes out to the mailbox and the answer's there. Well, did that just materialize in the mailbox, or did someone somewhere mail it days ago for it to align with this thought that this person had? Which starts messing with the idea of time.
which is fine because we've already screwed up time when it comes to quantum physics. We know time and space don't exist in the way that the model says it should exist,
No,
which
but
is
it
back
does in the
time.
minds of most human beings, and where everything is happening in a chronological order,
The
and
arrow
that
of
that's
time,
what's going on, and A has to happen before B can happen,
right?
B and result in C. No, that's not true. The
No,
time is malleable.
time doesn't exist at all. The
Yeah,
only way
okay, you
it
go there
exists
too.
is in the mental structure of human beings needing to do. And in the doing, they need to have a time because we have a space, we have these dimensions that, we have in science, right? And one of
Right,
them is the arrow of time.
right.
The speed of light. Well, the speed of light is determined by time and space.
Yeah,
So we use them as markers or ways to deal with things, but it's an assumption because even in the Vedic traditions 4,000 years ago, they said the time didn't exist. But if
mhm,
it does exist, it's meant a mental construct that is useful for the human being. The problem with that also is then in the philosophy of karma, karma is memories that keep moving into the subconscious mind and creating an outpicturing of that in your world, all of that being mental. And,
exactly,
and that if you live in the now, there isn't any because there's no past and future.
right.
How you get into that space of just being in the now is what all the great teachings are trying to bring you to.
Yes. Has anybody figured it out?
Yes.
Who's figured it out?
Well,
I mean, to the point that they truly live entirely in the present,
yeah,
without any
yeah.
part of their way of thinking about anything that has ever happened or ever would happen. They're completely and absolutely in the present moment.
The one that I'm really clear about is Amma, who is the hugging saint. And
Oh, I've heard of this
Amma
one.
is always in the current present. In fact, somebody said, when you look out at the audience of thousands of people, what do you see? And she says, I don't see thousands of people. I see God in thousands of different ways.
Ah, that's
And
lovely.
she is, and there have been many saints before who have been in this place. Satguru is another one over there who's become very popular. And he says, if you don't have any past and future, there's nothing that you have to worry about. And it's all taken care of anyway when you realize you're not the doer.
Well, if you don't have a past or future, you can't worry. There's no construct to do it without being concerned about what you've done in the past or what's going to happen in the future. There is nothing.
Right.
You're just there.
That's doing away with the ego.
And my guess is that to be in that state of mind requires an absolute peace be present. I would imagine when Anna's
Oh,
in the room that there's an energy that goes over it that just settles everything down.
it's palpable.
I'm sure it is.
We've been to see her over the last 20 years. Every time we walk into that space, it's just like, whoa.
I felt it when I was in the room with Abraham.
Mm,
There was a palpable energy that shifted the room.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's a
And
great analogy there.
interdimensionally, if we're back to science, interdimensionally with the many worlds theory, there are so many dimensions. And also, when you look at the Vedic traditions and the Eastern traditions, there are multiple dimensions. There's the astral dimension and the spiritual dimension, and all these different dimensions of
Right,
things.
right.
Guru talks about when you cross over, you're moving only through a doorway into the astral plane.
Mm.
And now your body is a light body instead of being what we would call a physical body.
I remember the first time I heard Bruce Lipton speak. This was back in the 1990s, and he was talking about how every human cell has these microscopic crystalline antenna, and that there are millions of them, maybe more than that in the body, and that they all resonate with a single frequency, like a radio frequency, but not. and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
a newborn baby doesn't have that for like, I think he said maybe an hour or two after birth, and then they're all up and they're all working and they're all receiving information. But from where? From who? Well, probably from the being who has that body, who is in a different dimension.
Right.
And there's
Right.
somehow, some way, there's communication over that dimensional bridge that allows communication to flow back and forth between the spirit and the human.
Who would have thought that before cell phones we could communicate that way?
Nobody. It was like sci-fi, and now if you don't have one, something's wrong.
True. And where's the progression going for the future of communications? We won't need anything but telepathy.
Well, I got an email from Amazon yesterday telling me that I'm eligible to receive now Alexa Plus. Do you know about this?
No.
It, there she is.
Ah,
Alexa, not now. Anyway, I won't say her name again.
but it.
So the deal is that it's AI and it talks to you. You used to have to say that name before you said anything to signal to the computers that you wanted information. You don't anymore. You do it at the very beginning and then you just go on in this conversation. It's quite fascinating.
And AI is now on your laptop, it's on your phone,
Oh
it's
yeah,
on
I
everything.
installed it on my phone when I was
Yep.
setting this up yesterday.
It's truly astonishing where, evolution takes us from that standpoint. I mean, science is always changing, which is one of the things about science is we think it's hard and fast. It's not. What I
No.
learned when I was in 7th grade doesn't apply to much of anything except the fact that Pluto is not a planet.
That's great.
It's always changing. And the interesting thing I think with a lot of the new thought individuals like Ernest Holmes and Mary Baker Eddy and Emma Curtis Hopkins is they were talking from a different place about the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that language to me, to a lot of people, it's confusing because of the way they were brought up or whatever. But to me, it speaks directly without having an interpreter in my head. The ego going, oh, well, this is what that means. I don't get that from listening to like Ernest Holmes in his talks when he would do his talks.
No, one of the most powerful things that ever occurred to me, and I know this is pretty standard knowledge for many people, was when I heard the name of God. When
Mm,
I heard that the name of God was I am.
mhm.
And I would use this in talks. I would say, "What is the name of God?" And the answer would come back, "I am," because I would tell the story first. And I say, "Who is God?" And they would say, "I am." And I go, "Yes, you are." Because that awareness of my divinity breaks through all of these shackles that would otherwise hold me as being human. I am not human. I am spirit. And that distinction was the most important thing I ever learned from Ernest Holmes.
Yeah, it's a great one, really good. I think the other one that helped me is in the last 30 years is this concept I'm not the doer. I don't have anything to do with this. It's the divine intelligence working through this mind and body. I am is working through this mind and body.
Right.
And I don't know when it started that we started getting confused about, 3 weeks into birth.
Could be. Well, when we started listening to other people, because what I have always heard is that a newborn baby cannot identify the difference between its body and its mother's body.
I've heard that.
That may be an astounding awareness that somehow we're forced to give up.
I, I think there's so much to still understand about human beings, but first we really got to get clear about who we actually are. I am.
Yes. The one way I use that in my life is I do prayers for myself and those that ask me every day.
Mhm.
And as I go through the steps, and I know we're going to do that in a later podcast, but one thing that I tend to say very often is that after I identify myself with and as the divine, I say I speak with the authority of the divine. My word is God's word. And then I say the thing that I'm calling into my life.
Mhm.
And I state my realization, somehow that clicks in me that I have that authority. And when I say it's so, it's so.
And I think it's, that idea is profound in the teachings of science of mind. When I was teaching with Mary Jean, and we would go, we would teach the 5 steps, and I'd say, look, if you get the first step, you're good.
It's true, but most people can't
Right.
because they can't move into that unified state. They still
True.
think they're a separate person, and that's a tough one to break.
It's very hard because we're educated in a Judeo-Christian theology that says that you're not any of that, and along with a
Oh,
lot of the other.
blasphemy.
Huh?
Blasphemy.
It I grew up, Christian in that, and hearing that all the time is, "You're not God. You
Oh,
gotta
not
pray to
well,
God."
not further than that. In my place of worship as a child, I was told that I was worthless, that I was a sinner, that I had no value at all until I did certain things to atone from the creator. And I what else you do? You do what you're told. You accept it to some degree, and until the point comes where it just doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
And then you break away. And truly, for me, that story about Jesus when he's asked about being born again, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
When you suddenly break away from all of these ways of seeing the world that our parents and our teachers and all the people around us said it is, and get no, something else is going on. To me, that's a rebirth.
It is. And I think that for me, the realization was as a sophomore in high school, and it was that a lot of this is bullshit. And
Can we say
and
bullshit on a podcast? I
of
suppose
course.
we can.
And I, the turning point for me was they asked me to be the, what do you call it, the youth minister, and get up and give a talk at one point.
I did that. Yeah.
I got up there and did a talk on the difference between loneliness and solitude. And
That's great. You
the,
you gave a lecture
a lecture.
to the group rather than a sermon.
So the minister,
Congratulations. Well
yeah,
done.
the minister came over, and afterwards he says, "Well, let me tell you how that applies to being saved. Being saved in
So in some
basil."
way, he came in and saved you according to his understanding.
Right. And at that moment, I said, "I'm done. That's it for me."
Well, I think maybe all of us have that moment of break. Mine
Yeah.
is that when I was 12, I accepted Jesus as my savior. I played that game. And when I was 18, I was actually dating a woman 12 years older than me. She had a child. She was divorced. And my minister took me aside and said, if you keep dating this woman, you're going to go to hell. Wait a minute. The deal was if I accept Jesus, I'm going to heaven. Now you're telling me because of something I'm doing, I'm going to hell? This is a sham. And I
Yeah.
walked away.
Good. I do think that if you're curious at all, and you're a little obstinate like I am, you go, "No, this is not true. There's something wrong with this." In fact, in my science class, there was something wrong with this to begin with. But coming back to the idea of consciousness is preeminent over everything else, how do you take and teach this to folks that are in between and in crisis, and going, "Yeah, but my life is falling apart, or I don't know what I'm going to do." And you're telling me there's a great consciousness that's in charge of everything.
Well, I in the people in that circumstance, they're so myopically focused on the problem what I give them is something as simple as an affirmation to say 100 times a day that is the opposite of the thing that's got their attention, that they are continuously adding to by thinking about it over and over and over again and bringing it even more horribly into their lives. where if I give them a statement to say that's the opposite of that, and they promise to say it every day in large numbers, something starts to give way. It starts to weaken the hold that that has on them. And it only has hold on them because they believe it.
Right. Right. I think it's really important for, and also to mention that the last podcast that we did, you went through the 5 steps of treatment, and we're going to do it again in the next one because there's a
Oh,
couple of other techniques that we can use to help people with that kind of thing. I think the other thing is science is now bridging over this gap of spirituality and science. That's why we call this higher reality, is because there's something else and it's beginning to show up more and more and more.
and
I
I
see
think
it.
on both sides of that equation, on the
Yes,
science side and on the spirituality side.
yes, I agree. And down here, I'm in Mexico, and we see the Catholic tradition is still very strong
Of
here
course.
and powerful. And at the same time, there's almost as many folks coming in and trying to understand what New Thought is about and what this
Oh,
teaching means and so on. And I think more so now it's growing in Mexico than it is in the US and
oh,
in
I
some of the
agree.
other
I saw
countries.
that a dozen years ago. And that's one reason when I was president of the international organization that I said we must put emphasis on Latin America, especially Mexico,
Yeah.
because they have the potential to explode. There's and it wouldn't be the first time in South and Central America that this has happened. You know the story of Secho Inoue from Japan and how it was a very successful metaphysical movement that actually came through initially through the writings of Ernest Holmes' brother,
Yeah.
and out of all that, it grew wonderfully in Japan, touched a lot of lives, but it also had an incredible impact in the country of Brazil.
Oh,
So when the founder of Secho Inoue went down to Brazil with his wife, he would speak to groups in stadiums, big stadiums. I mean, that
wow.
was how popular it was down there.
Yeah.
So it's already shown that that it can work, and it can work across cultural lines, and it's going to happen no matter what we do. I go down to Mexico. I've seen you when I go down there, and other people that are in this movement, and the work they're doing is profound.
Yeah.
Now they probably could use some more organization, and that will happen in time. I mean, look how long the Christian church has had to have an impact on the human experience at the level it does. It's taken thousands of years. We're working
Yeah.
on 100.
Well, we do have some experience in the Latin American countries with traditions that were before us
Yes,
that had more of a connection to nature I am, than many of the traditions that we have in modern times.
right. Except that Catholicism pretty much stomped those down.
No two ways about it. It was very interesting. You get saved or we kill you.
Oh, did you hear that the new pope wrote a letter to the president of the United States and said that he was against the idea that we have limitations on our immigration.
Oh,
And if you
interesting.
think about it, though, so does the Catholic Church. If you want to get into heaven,
Yeah. Oh, and marriage regulations and all the other kinds of things.
right, right,
It
right, right.
it
I
has
don't
to do
know.
with
Let's not be judging anybody, folks.
it has to do with, are you going with my way of seeing the world or your way?
Well, and hasn't that been the challenge of the human experience? Hasn't that been the point of war and
Yeah,
and pestilence and all the crud that human beings have drudged up? It's because we have different ways of seeing the world, and we think the other guy's wrong. The other guy's not wrong. It's just the way he is. Leave him alone. Let him be the way he wants to be, and you be the way you want to be. Let's
I
all be all
agree.
right.
I agree. I think for me, separation is the biggest issue. The biggest issue is everything we see, taste, touch, whatever, we see as separate from us.
Which is an illusion.
Totally.
There's only us, and there's
Yeah.
only one of us.
There's only the singularity. Like I say before this, I said that there was light that comes through a prism, becomes multiple rays, but the singularity hasn't changed. It's
Right.
the
It's still the
same.
light.
It's still the light. And light is powerful in all great traditions. And I think there's science, it's important in science, it's important in everything. What is it about light that we all need to understand? Even in the astral tradition, astral plane, everything is basically light and shadow.
Right. And I think if you look at how you would define those concepts of light and darkness, that you begin to understand that the light contains something, the darkness is void of something. We want to
Yeah.
move from the void of a lack of understanding into the light of getting what's going on at some level. I mean, that's obviously an ongoing process as we evolve, and good
Yeah.
for us to evolve.
In
But
science, I kind of liken it to this idea of dark energy and dark matter.
mhm.
And that we're looking at the fact that the universe is expanding. Now, normally what happens is when you have an explosion, things expand, and then over time they begin to contract.
Okay,
The universe hasn't done that.
that's
It
true.
it it has not slowed down. It's expanding at a faster rate.
I want to ask you a question about space. Which is also, we could say, is an illusion. But if many scientists describe a universe that is expanding at the speed of light, and I'm wondering, are our bodies expanding at the speed of light as well? Is everything in the universe simply growing larger at that rate? Or
Uh,
is it just the edges that are growing larger?
yeah, it's a paradox in some sense because traveling at the speed of light, you don't exist. There's no existence at the
One
speed of
could
light.
argue that that's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. It's all an illusion, yes. In where science is today, it's expanding very rapidly. And the reason now they talk about it's expanding is because of dark energy.
Mm.
So I think that the higher reality and understanding higher reality is a key now that we're beginning to focus on more and more. And thanks to being in the 20th and 21st century, we're learning faster than we ever have before.
We absolutely are, and we'll learn faster than this as well when the time is right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes about this thing called the human species and how it is evolving, and I can't see us being anywhere past adolescence in our
Oh,
understanding of the universe, and I'm probably being very generous with that.
you are being very generous. And we've had, look at the number of extinctions of the race itself. I mean, from the last million or 2 million years, humans have gone extinct. Extinct primarily. There may be a few left in certain circumstances, but we certainly have some relationship to the Denovians and to the Neanderthals and so on, but they weren't anything like what we are, right?
No.
And by the way, when AI takes over, why do we need a body? Because it'll be doing all of the work with the robot. And why do we need a mind? We don't need to make any decisions.
Well, we don't, but we still want to have pleasure. Bodies are good for that.
Oh,